Good morning, Will.
Morning, Martin.
We've been out stalking this morning and we've shot a deer. So what I want to do today is look at how we follow up a deer humanely. In the vast majority of cases, they're going to be dead, but occasionally we'll have a wounded deer to deal with, and we'll talk about dispatch. But a lot of it is marking where the deer was stood, identifying the strike and what signs you got the strike, and making notes about the different types of strike, and then following that blood trail, and then hopefully finding a dead deer at the end of that trail. Yep. We'll also look at the use of dogs as well. Excellent job, Will. You just shot a deer there out of the high seat. Can you just run me through the process or the things that you must think about before you take the shot? We mentioned it in the last video on rifle safety, but it's well worth reiterating it here.
Yeah, so there's a few things. You're looking for a safe backstop, and then myself looking for a stable position to be shooting from. Going back to the deer, looking at any obstructions between the rifle and the deer, any other animals that are in the vicinity, is there an animal behind the deer or just out of shot? And then in general you're looking at the behaviour and the position of the deer. Is it broadside, is it turned to face you or facing away from you? So there's plenty to think about.
A lot to think about, and that's excellent. The one thing that you must also think about is marking the position of that deer as you take the shot. So you know exactly where that deer was stood when you took that shot, how it was facing, so then we can then go and find where the bullet hit it, the strike, from that point. If you can get a range on the deer, that's good. So if you've got a range finder, get a range on the deer or estimate the range of the deer. But one of the best ways is also you mark something behind the deer, so you've got a line straight to where that deer was stood, so that when you've taken that shot you can be very clear where that deer was stood. The deer might run, this one did, so rather than marking where it's run into cover, you need to mark where that deer was stood when the shot was taken. Another advantage of using the high seat is you know exactly where the shot was taken from. Yeah. If we need to come back to this point, we can come back to the seat and we can find it again. If you were foot stalking, then you need to mark where you were stood, so that then if you need to come back, you can actually find that line again and the range estimation. One way I'll do it is, literally I'll just put the stick in the floor, and I can leave the stick there, and that's where we were stood when the shot was taken, and then we can go forward to where we think the strike was. With two of us, one thing you can do is, you taking the shot, you could then put me where you think.
Direct you from here.
Yeah. So I would go forward. At this point you would have unloaded the rifle, I would go forward, and you put me on the strike. The other thing that you would note when you take the shot is how the deer reacts. So how did this deer react? How would you?
It kicked, didn't it? Jumped and then ran. It was a classic sort of chest shot, and it sounded right as well, didn't it? That's the other thing, you're listening as well for the shot strike, aren't you? Yeah, different shot strikes you get a slightly different sound, so a chest shot, as you say, is a good solid thwack or thud. In the vast majority of cases, a well-placed chest shot, that deer is going to drop on the spot, and then the way you approach it is also important as well, because you've got to be 100% that deer isn't going to jump up and run off into the woods. Some of that is, you've got to leave the deer. How long would you leave it before you approach the deer? Depends on the reaction, doesn't it, really? How certain you are, how confident you are of that your shot's been a good one. But if a classic chest shot reaction sounds good, leave it 5-10 minutes. 5 minutes is a sensible time. So you'd have reloaded just to make sure that if it was dead, you can shoot it again if there's any sign of life. Certainly if you could see it. So if we were sat at that seat and you could see the deer had dropped to the shot, and you could observe it through binoculars, you could observe it through the thermal, you could observe it through the scope, and you'd be fairly confident at that sort of range that you're dealing with a dead deer. And then you unload to come down the high seat, obviously, but then to get up to that deer you want to reload, and you need to approach it just cautiously, just in case there is any sign of life. Turn the magnification down, just be in a position where if it does stand up or shows any sign of life, you can take that.
Yeah, there's one thing which is the most obvious thing, that a deer is still alive.
If it reared its head.
Yeah, if its head was up, its head would be up, be alert, be looking at you, and in that case you would get a dispatch shot into the head or into any part of the deer, really, just to make sure that deer is dead. One thing I would say is, whenever you take a shot, always assume that deer has been hit. Even if it doesn't react to the shot and it just walks off normally, just assume it is hit. Just follow exactly the same procedure. Mark where it was stood when you took the shot, and then go look at the strike. So when you took the shot, where was the deer stood? What did you mark?
So the deer was sort of 10 or 15 yards this side of the brambles, not a long way from the high seat, 60 yards or so. It was broadside, chest shot, and it ran right-handed.
And which way was it facing?
It was facing right-handed.
Very good. Right, let's go over and see if we can find that strike. So as you get up to the point, just slow up and have a good old search. Here we go. And it's a good idea not to try and not trample over that too much. We've got a lot of blood there, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if there's just little bits of blood, you can literally have a piece of blood on a leaf like that. All you've got to do is disturb it, turn it over, and you've lost your sign. So we've got a good strike here. Do you want to talk me through what you find, what you see?
Quite a reassuring colour, isn't it? Sort of that bright red pink, which would indicate heart and lung. You can actually see some bits of lung on the grass and the leaves here, can't you?
That bright red is well oxygenated arterial blood, it's heart blood. So it's fair indication you've hit the heart there. And you say that pink frothy blood is from the lungs. So that's classic chest shot. You've got a good exit wound, lots of blood there. So fairly confident you've got a dead deer there, which will just run into the wood and died. So as well as the blood, you will get hair. And at the entrance side, the hair is cut as a bullet enters. And then as it exits the deer, so this is more the exit side here, the hair will be sort of attached to bits of skin and it's sort of punched out, and the colour and length of hair will give you a good indication of where the deer was hit as well, but obviously that varies with species and with season. That's a really good strike. If you find a strike like that, I'm fairly confident you've got a dead deer. You never know for sure, so you always approach it with caution. Thermal's very good in this situation, but use your binoculars. And certainly with two of us, as we start to follow this trail, I might be concentrating on finding the next bit of blood. You could scan ahead and just see if you can see the deer laid there. If its head is up, then it needs a dispatch shot. The way to track this, what you're looking for is spots of blood. So there's a spot. Only go forward when you see the next bit of sign, because again, as the blood peters out and the exit wound may get blocked, then you lose the blood. It's
quite easy to lose if it's fading light as well. If the light's failing, it's quite easy to lose a blood trail, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So a head torch is ideal if you're having to do this at night. Again, thermal comes into its own as well. Yeah. You won't really see these spots of blood in the thermal, but you will be able to scan ahead, looking for the deer laid there. As you find a spot, and just keep scanning ahead there. And sometimes you're literally on your hands and knees looking for the tiniest spots of blood. There. Yeah, a lot of blood there, and that's where it's gone in through there. If it's just a little bit of blood and you're going to struggle to find it again, then mark it. So I've just got some biodegradable marker tape so that if we need to come back and find that blood again, I know it's beneath that. Also, if we can't find this blood trail, and this is the last bit of blood we've found, if we have to come back with a dog, we know where the dog needs to take over. Right, let's carry on, see if we can find this. Nice and slowly, just follow each patch of blood from one spot to the next. You can also see where it's run past that tree, look.
So we're not always looking on the floor, are we?
And that's the other thing with the strike, you'll sometimes get bits of material halfway up a tree and a long way back. I don't know if you ever shot a deer in snow, you just see how far that strike goes back.
Yeah, it's surprising how far, yeah. Right,
I can see that deer in the thermal, Will, and it's dead. So if its head was up, the obvious sign now of it being still alive is its head would be up and it'd be looking at us, and then you'll be take another shot there. Yeah. Just get on the sticks. Just bear in mind that it's much closer.
Yes.
So you want to wind your scope right back, and you'd have to aim slightly higher than normal, and make sure it is safe. But it'd be a nice safe shot there. But there's no sign of life. His chest isn't rising, his head is definitely not up, it's not kicking, it's not trying to get away or anything. So that is just a dead deer, which is exactly what you'd expect with that sort of strike, really. Yeah. It's good practice, even if you've got a dead deer, just follow the blood trail, because you learn an awful lot just by following a trail. Even if you've got a dead deer and you can see the dead deer, even if it's laid out there, it's always worth going and having a look at the strike and looking at what's the remnants of what's at the strike and the trail, and then comparing that to
just as practice, isn't it?
Exactly, so that when you do have to track one for real, you've got that experience behind you. Okay, just as you get to deer, check it is absolutely dead with the eye reflex. Excellent job, Will, you found your dead deer. We've got a gralloching video which takes you on through the next steps in terms of how you would then process this deer from this point. But the rest of this video, what we want to do is look at when it isn't as straightforward. Okay, Will, we've done the chest shot, which is sort of textbook, and that was a relatively straightforward one. What we're going to go through now is some of the more difficult strikes, which occasionally happen. Fortunately, not that often, but they do happen, and it's important that you know how to follow these up. Like we did with the chest shot, if this was for real, then we'd have marked the position where the deer was stood before you took the shot, so we could get to this point fairly accurately. And then what we're looking at here, well, you tell me what you think it is.
Looks just like a leg shot, doesn't it? Short hair here and actually some bone fragments as well. A little bit of blood, but there's not much blood, is there?
No, there isn't a lot to go at here, but like you say, short hair, there is actually a little bit of muscle there, and as you say, bone fragments, but there's something specific about these bone fragments which tell me it comes from the leg. Long splinters and fairly cylindrical, come from a round bone. The heavier fragments get blown further back. How would you have expected that to react to the shot? What might you have seen?
It will often sort of stumble and before regaining itself, and they're surprisingly mobile on 3 legs, aren't they?
Very mobile on 3 legs, and the injured leg quite often is hanging, is hanging loose, is flopping away. You'd probably known immediately that that shot was a little bit low. In terms of sound,
like a sharp crack, a loud crack as well, isn't it? Very different to your typical chest shot.
Yeah, you've seen the reaction, you've heard the reaction. We'd have probably waited a little bit longer if you'd seen that reaction. At least 5 minutes, if not longer. But at this point, then I wouldn't follow this deer up. We'd leave it a long time.
There's a risk of pushing it further away.
That is still very much alive and, as you said, quite mobile. This is one of the more difficult ones to follow up, and certainly not really one to be done on your own. You will need some help on this one. Fortunately, this isn't a common occurrence. That's why we go for the chest. You've got plenty to aim at. The other thing to point out is this, which is?
That's where the bullet has struck the ground, isn't it? It's come through the leg and it's buried itself.
Nice soft backstop, good. So if you find that, you know where the bullet has ended. So if you can't find any strike and you've got marked your line back to where your shot was taken from, you know that that bullet has literally followed that trajectory. The alternative is you might place other people out where you think that deer might move to. So for example, there is another high seat on the next ride down from here. If this was one we were going to follow up, I might put you on that high seat on that next ride down. I'd very carefully follow this through this piece of wood, and if the deer moved ahead of me, you might get a chance to shoot it as it crossed that ride. Okay, Will, this is another strike that we've set up. Can you just talk me through it?
Quite a lot of hair, isn't there? That's the first thing to notice. And actually, as you look closer, the blood is a very different colour to your typical chest shot. It's very dark, grainy, muddy type of red, isn't it?
A little bit too far back from the chest for the heart and lung. Probably hit liver. In a typical liver shot, you might get a bit more blood than this, but this is one we've mocked up. But this is classic sort of liver blood. In terms of reaction,
hunched up and moving away, not too quickly, but they sort of hunch up, don't they, and then gradually make off into cover.
You can get this. You've gone for a chest shot, slightly quartering, so you might have hit it perfectly well in heart and lungs, and hit its heart and lungs, but because the deer was quartering, it's exited through the liver. It could quite easily be a dead deer still, in terms of tracking, and I say in a lot of cases there'll be a good blood trail, and it's just a question of following that blood trail cautiously, because a liver shot, again, it should bleed out fairly quickly. So if you give it 10-20 minutes, you will find a dead deer at the end of the trail. Okay, Will, here's another simulated strike. Can you talk us through it, please?
Again, we've got quite a lot of hair, haven't we? Longer hair this time. You can actually see some green on the leaves as well, which is gut content shot through the rumen.
Yeah, not a good sign. How you might expect this deer to react?
Firstly, the sound is quite different, isn't it? It's more of a hollow sort of plop, and then they'll move away slowly. It's almost similar to a liver shot, isn't it? The reaction.
They'll definitely hunch up and just walk off very gently. You can smell the green as well.
A little bit of bone down here, it's like a could be rib.
The other thing you'll see, you've got bits of tissue and hair blown right across that strike, full length of that strike. Again, what you don't want to do is trample over all of that, because if you've got a dog coming in, then as well as smelling that, it will smell all the way down there, all around that strike, to figure out what's going on. So in terms of following this up, what would you do?
Based on the shot reaction, you'd give it at least half an hour until you came to this site and started to look for the signs, and the chances are that it's moved off into cover. And after a while, at least half an hour, they'll sort of bed down a bit, and there isn't as much risk of bumping them on. And
certainly the last thing you want to do with this is go straight in. This is one where, unless there is some blood as well, it's probably worth leaving a good long time and getting a dog in to track this. If there's a blood trail to follow as well, you could follow the blood trail, but just be aware, be very cautious as you're following it, that the deer could still be alive at the end of that trail. Final scenario, probably the worst one we don't want to come across. Talk me through this one, please.
Bits of tooth and gums, which indicate a jaw shot. Not really any hair, not really an awful lot of blood.
It's a tiny little bit of evidence as well, so you know you've got to be really clear on where the deer was stood to find that even. It doesn't bode well in that you've got a very mobile deer with not a particularly fatal wound at this point. That deer will die if it's had its jaw blown out, but it won't die very quickly, I'm afraid. So it is one that we do need to try and find, and it's one of the reasons why we don't really encourage people going for headshots. A well-placed headshot will kill the deer instantly, but if you mess a headshot up and you've got that to find, a deer with that sort of strike, you've got your work cut out. In terms of reaction to shot, what would you expect?
If you know you're going for a neck or a headshot and it doesn't drop on the spot instantly, then you know something is up, and you'll often see the jaw hanging down if the shot has gone wrong.
If you get the opportunity to get another shot into it, get another shot into it. It's certainly a case for a specialist tracker, and that is a very mobile deer. Hi Tony, thanks for joining us today. We've been talking about how to follow up deer humanely. In most cases, people aren't going to need your services as a specialist tracker, but there are times when it can go wrong. Really, you're here to sort of tell us what we should be doing to make sure we can find that deer.
Always mark where you've taken the shot from, mark where you think the shot site is, and if you think it is, you know, a leg shot or head shot or something like that where the deer's going to be very mobile, try not to move it on too far. You're better off letting the animal run into cover, letting the adrenaline drop out of the animal. Gut shots probably half an hour minimum. Leg shots are obviously very trickier. A three-legged deer will run as fast as a four-legged deer. And head shots the same. They've got four legs, everything's working, their organs are all working, and they're going to keep going.
Say I've got a gut shot and I need to give you a ring. What sort of information are you going to want from me?
When you shot it, we maybe ask the calibre, it's not really relevant. Time of day, how long ago you shot it, have you marked the shot site, and have you marked where you think you've taken the shot from. Deer species.
You're right.
I know it sounds stupid, sometimes, you know, we've been called out on a row and you get to the end, it's something completely different. Well, it happens, unfortunately. So, have you got permission to track on that land? And
what sort of length of time until we call you out?
The time has no bearing on it, really. In fact, the longer you leave it, the better it is for the dog.
Okay.
And the less disturbance you've created by walking through everything.
If I think I could find it, so again, a liver shot and there's a good blood trail, is it all right me following it a little bit?
Absolutely. We're not telling people by all means go and have a look.
Yeah.
But if you see it's got a leg swinging, or you know you have managed to clip the jaw or something, then you're better off leaving it.
At what point should I pull out then? When should I stop and think, no, this is a job for a specialist?
Almost straight away. So if you go to the shot site and you confirm what you've seen, you know, you've bit of leg bone on there, bit of hair, but a little bit of blood, and it has run off on three legs, then leave it.
I've got a little dog. He's no way ever going to be a specialist tracking dog. If I use that...
Know your own dog's limitations. So your dog, your stalking dog, will find probably 98% of the deer you shoot.
Yeah.
Because it's gone into thick cover and you just can't find it. Your dog will find that perfectly. It's the ones that you have to leave, or you're better off leaving and following up with a specialist tracking dog.
And then you guys, we can find you on the internet?
Yeah, we've got a website and we've got a facility on there called Find a Tracker. So you let your phone or your computer know your location, it will put you in contact with the nearest guy to us. It works very well, and that's been used a lot by people.
Yeah.
And also you can get to it through the BASC website as well.
Okay, Will, so we sort of covered a whole range of different situation scenarios. Are you feeling a bit more confident now in terms of follow-up, or?
Yeah, I think it's good to be prepared for every eventuality, isn't it? And the key thing is that, 9 times out of 10 or more often, things are straightforward, but you need to know and be prepared in case they don't go straightforward.
Yeah,
So.
say most of the time the deer you'll shoot it, it'll fall over dead, and there's no issues. Or even with a good chest shot, it will run into cover. I think an important element is that you learn from every one, because they're not all going to react the same.
No.
You get different reactions. Even with a straightforward chest shot, it'll react differently. Sometimes you think it hasn't even reacted, you just walk off normally. So you just need to learn from every experience, and hopefully when you do get a problem, you know what to do about it.